I'm Craig O, and join me on my adventures with Craig O's Cryptocurrency as we cover the blockchain, Web3, NFT, and cryptocurrency technologies. Interviewing the best in the industry, giving tips and tricks, and also sharing with you projects that I'm most excited about.
When it comes to the empowerment of women in NFTs and the Web3 space, my guest, Laurent Turton, has it on lock. With her own podcast, Freedom with NFTs, which is dedicated to sharing information about digital assets with the masses. We will definitely do a deep dive on her podcast, and I'm super excited to do so. Her most notable guest was Gary Vee. And she also engages with those who are passionate about the metaverse and Web3. Today, we will discuss her personal insights and experiences, both positive and challenging, in this emerging marketplace. She is also self-portrait photographer and creator of Find the Hair, which she started over a decade ago. She takes unique photos of herself in a rabbit mask in interesting locations. It's one of the favorite ways for her to express herself. She is also a public speaker and a #1 best-selling author of Soul Career Clarity. She is a restaurateur who implemented a POAP, which is a proof of attendance protocol, and we will talk to her about her loyalty reward program for her restaurant. She is a non-for-profit vice president of Help the Kanai. This provides education and essential services to women and children in southern India. Turton is known throughout the business world, and she successfully helped women build and develop their businesses. Welcome, Lauren. How are you?
I'm doing wonderful. It's an honor to be here today to connect with you and to connect with your audience.
Absolutely. So you and I are both podcasters, and I really want to start here with you. You know, we're always responsible for bringing on great guests, curating great Web3 content. And by the way, you are always creating content well before Web3. So let's just start there. You know, for you, as a podcaster as well, how do you determine, what content you're going to put out there and how it's going to resonate with your audience?
Like you said, I've been creating content for quite some time before I entered the Web3 space. I was a business coach and I helped my clients create and launch high tickets offers and then scale their businesses leveraging organic marketing. And the systems and processes that I coached my clients on were the same systems and processes that I used to obtain clients and then scale my business. So, in regards to content creation, it's something that I've been familiar with for quite some time. As a podcaster, it was something that I was new to in regards to content creation. When I entered the Web3 space last summer, I was asking questions to so many people so that I could learn more about this new technology. And I realized that I could use my abilities to ask questions and also the fact that I'm not embarrassed about not knowing an answer to something. And I could put that all together and bring a podcast to life. And that's how Freedom with NFTs was born. And what was interesting is that I had no experience as a podcaster, but I knew that this was needed. At that time, there were only a handful of podcasts that were out focusing on NFTs. And I believe I was the first or one of the first females to start a podcast about NFTs. And so what I did in the beginning phases is I just went for it. I just started booking guests who knew about topics that I was having a hard time finding the answers on. So taxes, law, me as a person who, when I want to find something out, I will find out the information. I couldn't find many people to talk about those topics. So I said, okay, these are some of the first people I need to bring on the podcast, and I need to ask them questions about these topics from the perspective of Web3, NFTs, and crypto. And that's how Freedom with NFTs was born. Season 1 had 21 episodes. It was absolutely incredible, life-changing to have Gary Vee on the show. I interviewed him in real life when I was in New York City last year for NFT NYC. Then I took a little bit of time off from recording new episodes so that I could really analyze and sit with what it was I had created. I was also to the point where the money that I had allocated to start season 1 was tapped out because season 1 was self-funded. And so I took the months of January and February to align with the right companies or brands in regards to sponsorships or a grant. And I secured a grant with Near in February, and they funded 32 episodes. And so I recently started recording content and releasing new episodes. And what was interesting about season one is I was doing the outreach. I was reaching out to people and saying, I would love to have you on the podcast. I think what you're doing is incredible and you could provide a lot of value. What's been interesting about season two is people have been submitting a form with their information that I can then go through to figure out who it is I want to bring on to season two. And my process for that has been looking at the answers to the question on the form and then digging into the answers that they provide. And what's really interesting about this is I go through these forms and some people don't answer the questions. They just put their name and their email and they don't go in depth on the questions I ask, where other people will go off on the questions. And I have so much content that I can look at from just that initial form and then dig in even further. And again, what I'm looking for guests on the podcast are people who can provide answers that are strategy based so that the Freedom with NFTs audience members can walk away with strategy and action items from each episode. That for me is very, very important. It's not a podcast for people to just shill or share what it is that they're
Yeah.
working on. I want strategy. I want tangible answers for my audiences.
I love that you said that because I go through Twitter and I'll look at when I look at the top people, I'm not looking at who's following who, but I look when you see great content, especially on Twitter, the amount of engagement that it gets. So I did like a My Pet Hooligans project review, and there was a gentleman who did like went off on the liquidity pool. He went like in-depth analytics. Like that was his way of thinking. And finally he responded and he's like, man, thanks so much for giving me a shout out and for, putting me on your podcast. And then, I like to mention a lot of people in the Web3 space because I spend a lot of my time, probably like you, going through YouTube, going through Twitter and Discord and hearing what people are saying about the projects. And what you just said is you like to see social currency when you send out that form and you're going to qualify to have a guest on there. You want to see that the same time that you took into asking those questions and those being direct, you want to see how direct and how in depth can they get. And is there a chemistry as well? Because, you and I remember when we talked the first time, I was like, oh my gosh, this is amazing. She's got her podcast. She's establishing. She's got sponsorships. You were giving me some great tips and advice. And I love that. As your channel is evolving, right? You have your YouTube channel. You also then will put that out onto Twitter and to the other social platforms. Tell me a little bit about how your strategy in building your channel, because one of the things that I love, and before you tell me that, I love watching women come into the space and own it, because women have definitely been a major factor in my life. And it's something that early on, it's a small sliver. I think it's probably a little less than 20% that it's women in this space. And that's generous. So, tell me a little bit about, how you will go from creating the content and then what channels you put it out on and how you determine where you're going to put that content.
Oh, such a great question. My team and I have been going through such an in depth process recently on analyzing the data behind all of the platforms that we repurpose our content on. So, number one is recording each podcast episode. And then from there, we take little snippets or we repurpose the content and we put it out on all of the platforms: TikTok, Instagram, Twitter, Medium, Reddit. And what we did from the beginning in season one is put it out everywhere because we wanted to see the data behind each of those platforms. And what we recently have found is that our most well received platforms are my personal Twitter, the Freedom with NFTs Twitter, and also Medium is doing really well, and my personal TikTok. And so, what we're doing now is we're going to be doubling down on the top platforms that are getting the most engagement. And then the other thing recently that we've seen a shift on in the data is LinkedIn. Over the last 4 to 6 weeks, the data from LinkedIn has been popping off on Web3 content.
You,
So
you know,
now we're
you-
saying,
yeah.
all right, we need to double down on LinkedIn. And I think this is important for anyone who's creating content is create the content and then play around with the different platforms for a month, 2 months, 3 months, and then look at the data. And the data will tell you what is performing best, and then from there hone in on those platforms because the data doesn't lie. It tells you what is
No.
working. And
Yeah.
so that's I'm so glad you asked that because it's such an important thing for people who are about to create content, who have just started to creating content, is to understand how important the data is and
Well,
where the
also
different audiences are.
but also where people can consume content because we speak to beginners, we speak to intermediates, and the best compliment we can get is from alphas or giants in the space who are the people that are looked to as the professionals. Shelly Palmer actually did a blog post the other day, and the reason you're talking about LinkedIn because I think it's like where do people find great content, great interviews, which are your podcast and mine, and more importantly, it's Wall Street is seeing crypto as money. So there's a positive and negative to that. And the decentralized finance and the system that is now going to be taking over and our blockchains and some of these coins such as XRP Ripple, by the way, not financial advice, consult with your financial advisor. I feel like that's just so built into my head at this point because I don't want somebody going, I got into that crypto, but there are some really powerful cryptos. There's about 5 of them out there. And XRP, I believe, is at the top of this list where the new systems of banking, and I believe it's going to be completed by 2025. So the reason you're seeing a higher engagement on LinkedIn over this past 4 weeks or this past month is because a lot of Wall Street, a lot of business professionals are like, wait a minute, I need to start knowing and understanding Web3, blockchain. I need to understand about the primary native cryptos such as Ethereum, eGold, Elrond, the Elrond network. You got to start to understand Solana. They're doing a lot of great things. So I think that's really interesting. So I want to throw out something to you. What is and it doesn't have to be your favorite, but one of your top 5 NFT projects that you like? And I guess we'll go way of like Twitter and Discord. And not only why is it one of your favorite, not your favorite, so we don't get you in trouble, but why is it one of your favorite projects? And also more importantly, what is it about the social currency of the community that attracts you to saying this is one of my top 5 NFT projects that I like?
Happy Land Gummy Bears. And the reason why is because when I first entered the NFT space in the summer of last year, I made a story on Instagram about this. And my my community at that time, everyone thought I was crazy because no one knew what an NFT was. But what Happy Land Gummy Bears did is they were looking through hashtag NFTs, hashtag NFT, and they saw that I had made a post about it. And then they reached out to me and they said, Lauren, we're a new project and we are gifting NFTs to people that we think would be of value to our community. And we'd love to have you join the Happy Land Gummy Bear community. And remember, at this time, I didn't have an NFT. I barely knew what they were. I did not know the community aspect of NFTs. I didn't know any of this. And so, from them reaching out to me, gifting me an NFT from their collection, having me join their Discord community, it opened me up to everything that was happening in the space. And they really took the time to onboard me into what it is that they were doing. So Happy Land Gummy Bears will always be the community that goes down in my NFT history of who reached out to me, who took the time to onboard me, who took the time to answer questions and really get me involved. And then from there, I was able to say, oh, that's what these projects are doing. Okay, this is what Discord is. And I'll always be forever grateful for Happy Land Gummy Bears. And their story is incredible. I encourage anyone to look into what Happy Land Gummy Bears has done, how they came out with their collection, the quantity that they've donated to mental health organizations, and just how they show up in the space. Really, really special community and people.
I love that. And I think that's one of the things that gives people confidence once they understand. By the way, I have a bunch of different wallets. And I think that was the hardest thing. And I'm curious if you had the same challenge, especially as a podcaster. We come on, we want to be authentic, our most authentic self. We want to be vulnerable within every moment. But we also want to be knowledgeable to say, my challenge at the very beginning, and tell me if it was yours, setting up MetaMask, understanding the difference between a public and a private key, understanding, your seed phrase, you have a certain set of 12 or 24 words, not to put it on your Google Drive, to have authentic, Google Authenticator to be able to get in on centralized platforms. What was your biggest challenge in process?
All of that, everything that you just mentioned, I remember being so overwhelmed when I first started my journey. And with that, I'm not a tech person. I'm not someone who is really great at tech. I'm also not very organized. There's this illusion of me in the world that I'm this very organized and like really put together person. It's because I recognize that I'm not organized and I'm not put together and I don't know tech, so that I put the systems and people in my life in place to help support me so that I can best show up. When I first entered the NFT space, I was so overwhelmed by all of it. I was also very alone. No one knew what I was doing. I didn't share with anyone what I had just learned and what I was discovering because I was self conscious about it. Because
Right.
I thought, what am I doing here? Why am I learning about technology? Who am I to be a part of this with no tech background and someone who didn't know much about crypto? I entered the NFT space just from the NFT perspective, not from the crypto space. So, again, very self conscious during my first months in the space. Fortunately, I had a connection on Facebook, a wonderful human who, when the algorithm saw that I was Googling NFTs and researching it, they saw in his feed that he was talking about NFTs. So they put him in. You know how they do that on Facebook? They put
Yes.
the right people where you need them to be in your feed. And I saw that this person that I randomly was friends with was talking about NFTs. And I reached out to him and I was like, hi, I know we're already connected, but I don't know you. You don't know me. Would you be able to help me? And he spent hours, I'm talking hours and hours and hours for quite some time helping me learn about NFTs. And his project is Nova Jade Cosmetics. I believe he's the second person I had on the Freedom with NFTs podcast. And having this one person really helped me in the beginning. And then Happy Land Gummy Bears being my first community to be a part of, those two people, or that person and that project, those will always be so special to me because they helped me so much on my journey. And that's one of the reasons why I'm so passionate about the brand that I've created with Freedom with NFTs and helping others, is because it is so overwhelming when you
Yes.
first learn about all of this. And also,
Incredibly.
it can get really lonely and kind of scary.
Well, it's also that, and then when you have that doubt, I mean, one of the things that I really early on my podcast did is I realized very early on it would be great. It was very easy to get male guests, but I wanted to get notable female guests in the space like yourself. And for me, with you, I love your podcast. I love what you're doing. I love that it's slow and steady wins the race, and you're methodical in putting out the information. And also, it's a hint for anybody that wants to get onto your podcast is it's not that easy. You have to earn your stripes. And you have to show us that you're knowledgeable, that you know what you're talking about, that you come from a place of wanting to contribute. The other thing that I also recognize is when you buy an NFT to people that are not in this space, they're like, oh, you just bought a JPEG. No, I bought into a community. I bought into a community that will have thriving purpose over time. So I'm betting on the community to not only stay together, for it to see and have successful secondary market sales, but for it to also create the long-term utility. Maybe that's a liquidity pool, maybe that's merchandise, maybe that's opportunity for other airdrops or collaborations. In Twitter, this weekend I actually connected Spoiled Banana Society. They were a guest on my podcast, and I connected them with one of my other favorite projects, which is Hog Homies High Res the Rapper. And Spoiled Banana Society was doing a poker tourney, and I think they're going to do it at NFT NYC, which I wanted to talk to you about that as well. And so High Res tweeted back in, I'm in. And so this all came way of my direct connection with Easton Gladney, who connected me to you, right? So we start to interconnect these different webs. What has been the biggest benefit, or, when I say when you're out there, networking in the space of Twitter and Discord, what has been the coolest, whether it's a DM that's come in, it's been a compliment, or it's been like a nugget of information that's going to create even more value on your podcast?
Occasionally, I will get messages from people who do not engage in my content. No likes, no comments, no DMs, nothing. I have no interaction with this person. And they'll send a message saying something like, you are such a light in my life. Thank you for being a leader. Thank you for being someone that I look up to. Thank you for being someone who just shows up authentically in the world. And when I get those messages, I'm absolutely blown away because, from my point of view, I'm living my life and showing up in the world how I believe is best for me to show up in the world. And right now, at this point in time, is connecting with others and interviewing them about what it is they're doing in the technology space. And before that, I was a business coach and I was helping clients create and launch high ticket offers. And I was showing up authentically in my life, how I live, but also in business. Before that, I was an event producer and I would show up on social media sharing the events that we used to produce and the events that my company would put on in the nightclubs in San Diego. And my takeaway from all of that is people are watching. People are watching you, whether or not they engage in your content or not, they are watching you. And if you are someone who's showing up in the world authentically, whether or not you consider yourself a leader, but just someone who's sharing their journey, people are watching you. You are inspiring others. And it is a big deal to show up, whether you're a podcaster, a blogger, a content creator on TikTok or YouTube. It's a big deal to show up on these platforms. And so just remember, you're inspiring others when you're doing this type of work and you're showing up in this way. And so for me, when I get those messages, that just like, whew, it makes me so emotional and I appreciate it so much. We shared earlier a little bit on the topic of women in Web3 and how statistically it's 85% women in this space. And so for me, when
Amen.
I get
Right.
messages from women who have said things to me like, I was scared, this was so overwhelming, you inspired me to attend an event, things like that. I'm just honored that people think of me in that way when, again, I'm just sharing my journey on these social media platforms and sharing my gifts and my talents and my skills. And I encourage anyone to hone in on what it is that they align with, their gifts, their talents, their skills, so that you can show up in the world how you're meant to show up and you can also inspire others.
Yeah, and I think it also brings up to another thing. When the web was first starting and, Web 2, all the social platforms, there were opportunities very early on. And that's what we're seeing right now in Web 3. And people who are accessible now. Now, mind you, I had to earn my opportunity to get you on my podcast. It wasn't like, hey, come on my podcast. We had to be planned out, methodical, talk a little bit about the content, what's important to you. One of the things is it's falling forward, right? Being willing to being the vulnerable person. And I think a lot of women in this space, just like I feel like women are great decision makers. They're usually, if I'm working, say, with a couple, a male and a female, say I'm working with a couple in that regard, and we go out and we look at properties, it's usually the woman that's going to drive the final decision. It's what's happened. I'm not saying it's all the time. I want to be very clear, but it's to me one of the other selfish reasons to get more women into the space is that we then onboard more people into Web3 for NFTs and for crypto to become more common, for communities to become more common, for people to see not NFTs as projects, but for them to see it as businesses, not just in the way of businesses just to make money, but businesses of impact. One of the things I want to talk to you a little bit about is your non for profit. You're a vice president of this, and it helps women and children in Southern India. Tell me a little bit about that non for profit and what got you involved.
Help the Connie is a nonprofit that's based in the US that supports women and children in southern India. There's a nonprofit in southern India called Namaste Wings to Fly that we work with. And Namaste Wings to Fly has an orphanage that has about 100 kids that live on site and about 800 families in their off-site programs. Their off-site programs also include other schools, dorms, and we also provide medical support, education, and essential services for women and children through these two organizations. There's another organization in Italy called Namaste Wings to Fly that has 5 offices that also supports the orphanage in southern India. And many years ago, I was thinking, I want to see more places in the world. How can I do that? And I pulled out a globe, a physical globe, and I was spinning it around and I was looking at the world. And I thought, how can I see more places on this planet? And how can I do it in the best way possible? And I was looking and I was like, oh, India. Oh, my boyfriend's father goes to India every year with that nonprofit he's a part of in Italy. I wonder if I could ever go with him. And that was the thought that changed my life. And so the next time that I saw him when I was in Italy, I asked him, "Can I go to India with you?" the next time you go?" And he was like, what do you mean? What do you mean? You want to go to India with me?" And I was like, "Yeah, I want to go to India with you." So the first year that I went with him was through the Italian nonprofit. And I spent 2 or 3 weeks there, and we would check in on the families that were in the offsite program that I mentioned. There are about 800 families in the offsite program. They are supported by a sponsor from the Italian nonprofit. They donate about $500 a year that provides food, essential services, medical, et cetera, for these families. And they need their case updated in the system every year. So we would spend 14 hours a day traveling and checking in on these families, updating their case in the system. And while I was there, I kept hearing about this person in America named Zach. Rama, the president of the orphanage, he kept telling me, "You need to find Zach. You need to find Zach." And I was like, "Well, America's a pretty big place. There's a lot of Zachs out there, but I'll try to find Zach when I get back to America." Well, sure enough, I found Zach. And 10 years prior, he had been a college student and happened to go to that orphanage. And he was in college and university to become a lawyer. And so he started a nonprofit 10 years ago in the US and had been fundraising yearly to donate to the orphanage. And he hadn't been back in 10 years. So I found all this out through conversation with him, and I said, "I would love to be a part of the US nonprofit." He was like, "Listen, small organization, currently just me. If you'd like to volunteer." I was like, "Yeah, of course. I just want to volunteer. Like, I don't expect anything more from this, like to be on salary or anything like that." And I've been volunteering with Help the Connie for a few years now. And I've been to India under that organization now from the viewpoint of checking in on the projects that we fund and manage. And what's been really incredible recently with all of this is because of the NFT community, I've been able to do some fundraising for different situations that we have going on in our programs in Southern India. Of course, like most nonprofits, when the pandemic hit, we weren't able to do physical fundraisers. Fortunately, we did have a single donor, Timothy Sykes, who donated the quantity that we would typically raise per year. So we were able to keep our programs going in Southern India. And recently in the NFT space, I've done a few fundraisers and been able to raise money for an individual who, out of the 20 plus years that this orphanage has been going, she is the first one to graduate from their programs and go to a university outside of India. And she's leaving in a few weeks to get her master's in Germany. So I've been doing fundraisers for her to pay for her flights, to pay for any other expenses that she'll have while she's there. Yes, she did get, scholarships and student loans, but just, having money to spend on things that you don't expect that I know she's going to go through. And that's come from the NFT community recently.
Yeah, it's really incredible the deep dive that the NFT community has done into charities and organizations. And I want people to be a little pessimistic because there are a lot of projects out there. And again, there's thousands of projects. I'm not singling out one. And you want to make sure that when you are getting into a project, if that's the case, and I'm curious to see if your thought is similar, is go into the communities on Twitter and Discord. Listen to what people are saying. Are the project creators doxxed? Sometimes they're not. That's not always, but there are like multiple factors. So for me, when I'm going to get into a project, which is not a play for a project to grow like a Bored Ape Yacht, right? Because that's what's most common right now, or crypto kitties when people think about, or punks. But for me, if I'm going to get into a project, I have to believe in the founder. I have to believe in the mission. And I also have to make sure that in that group that there's long-term growth, not just for the charity organization that's funding outside programs, but we're watching Web3 take a real heavy hit into this space. And they've done it through the Ukraine war and all that's going on over there. They have been sending over funding, I believe, through crypto of Ethereum, to fund some of the things that are going on. So it's really powerful, all that's happening in decentralized finance. I want to talk a little bit about your POAP, which is proof of attendance protocol, and how it's really had a positive impact on your restaurant, what you like about the POAPs, and then maybe we get a little negative and tell me what you don't like about it right now.
Great question. So glad that we're diving into this. So I'm co-owner of Chow Chow Piadina. It's an Italian restaurant located in San Diego, California. It's in the neighborhood La Jolla. And we created a customer loyalty program using POAPs and NFTs. And the original program that we created looked like this. Every time you come into the restaurant and spend over $20, you get a POAP. Every sixth time you come into the restaurant, you get an NFT that includes utility like a free appetizer or glass of wine on your next visit. And what we created was a 5 tiered system. And in the original program, the first 20 people to go through this for the rest of their lives would get 20% off their bill, monthly AMAs with me, a bottle of Prosecco during their birthday month, an annual party for them plus one. We debuted this project on the last Sunday of October with an IRL in real life event that about 30 people attended. Now, the 30 people that attended this event were from an established NFT community created by Valerie Castillo. The community is called San Diego NFT Friends Community. And we launched this project to a group of people that already know about NFTs. And what we have done over these last months, is we've looked at what has worked with the program, what has not worked with the program, how we could use this program on a public launch to people who don't know about NFTs. And essentially, what we realized is we created something that is wonderful for a customer loyalty program, but it is also too early in regards to mass adoption. And so we've done a few little teasers where we've seen, okay, what happens if we do share about this and people who are outside of the NFT community find out about this? What happens when they come into the restaurant and they ask questions? Well, then now we have our team at the restaurant not focused on food and wine sales and customer service. They're focused on educating NFTs, crypto, et cetera. And that doesn't that doesn't work. It doesn't make sense. They need to be focused on restaurant service. And so what we are going to do moving forward when we do a public launch is we're going to be scaling back the program. We're actually going to be taking NFTs out of it, and we're just going to be moving forward with POAPs. And the reason why is because you can obtain a POAP with an email address. You don't need a crypto wallet.
Right.
And we want our program to be as easy as possible for the masses to become involved in this customer loyalty program. So that's what we created, and then those are some of the roadblocks that we came up with during this journey. In the long run, my objective with what we created is to have a software created around this, because essentially this is a software. A couple other roadblocks that we came upon were that our system processor Square is not linked with anything else. It's not linked with a POAP. It's not linked with an
Yeah.
NFT. And
Yeah.
also, we wanted to create a customer profile for each person who became a part of this program. Well, if you're familiar with Square, to create a customer profile, it takes a lot of time.
Yeah.
What we would also need in place would be like a landing page for the person to fill out all of their information so we can receive that. In my dream world, having all of this integrated into one software would solve all of those problems. So
This is why This is
long
why you were
term,
so this is why you were so valuable. I'm so excited because and I don't mean to cut you off. This is why I get so excited is that not only do you have an incredible podcast, but you have taken your entrepreneurialism. You've got your restaurant and you in real time have tried it. And that's why I asked you what's the positive and the negatives. And the positives are these utilities, but Web3 with Web3 sites, because it's multiple, I guess I'd say for the general public, it's multiple servers. There are many different nodes out there. So Web3 sites are much more clunky. And then where's my Prosecco? Well, Craig, it's your birthday month. And so again, and then the waiter comes up and they're going over the menu. And it's like, well, tell me about this program. It's not simple to explain. Have you created any video content that you can like text to your clients and say, listen, it's your responsibility as well as ours. We want you to learn this. Please watch these 3 videos so it can explain it to you and articulate everything. And then if you have a question after, email us and we'll answer it for you or hop onto our Discord. Has that been something you've wanted to do?
So with the Freedom with NFTs brand, we do have a free NFT 101 guide that you could get on our website. And when we do create the new program for Chow Chow Piadina, the restaurant, we will include assets like that, a QR code where they can go check it out, some video content, ways that they can get support that they would need, but outside of the restaurant setting.
I love it. So I want to come back to your podcast, right? The freedom with NFTs, right? You put a guest on. What has been probably say 5 things right off the top of your mind, is the 5 things that you want beginners to understand as they're coming into the space?
First thing that comes to mind is all walks of life, all skill sets, expertises, and talents are needed in the Web3 space. I shared with you earlier when I first got into the space, I thought It's just for tech people. It's just for people who know about these certain things about crypto and this and that. And I was really self conscious because I thought it was just for those people. It's not, it's for everyone. The Web3 space needs copywriters, graphic designers, needs people who know front end, back end. The list goes on and on. So all walks of life are welcomed here. The second thing I think is really important for people to understand is that we are at the very beginning stages of this technology and it is going to become mainstream. We saw it happen with the internet. We saw it happen with social media. This is like finding out about social media when the apps are even before beta test phase. So, why wouldn't you want to get informed and get involved now, especially with everything we know from Web 2 and taking all of your life experiences and channeling it into what is happening now with the shift in technology? The third thing that's really exciting to me about where we're at with Web3, as you mentioned earlier, is accessibility. Right now, you have access to people that you would not have access to in Web2 because the Web3 community, the NFT community, the crypto community is so small. So you're able to attend an IRL event and you're able to get time with Gary Vee. You're able to stand there and interact with him and talk to him and his team members, D Rock, and the other people who are a part of everything that he's created. Like we have access to really incredible people right now. Look at Paris Hilton. Paris Hilton is always popping off on Twitter. She's always doing incredible things for people in the Web3 and NFT community. Like you can get access to Paris Hilton right now by being in the same community as her in the Web3 space. That to me is just absolutely incredible. So, why wouldn't you want to, again, bring your skill sets, expertises to this area of the world and be able to connect with people that you wouldn't have been able to in the Web2 space? You said 5 points, right? Oh,
You did.
number
I think
four.
there's four. Yep.
Yep, number 4, do your own research. So DYOR, you're gonna see this all the time when you first enter the space. But what does that actually mean? A very great example I love to give is from my own story is when you're interacting with people on social media, Instagram, Twitter, etc., make sure it is actually who you think you are interacting with. The reason why I bring this up is because I have had many times now, and so many crypto, NFT, Web3 content creators have impersonator accounts that will take their content, start a new account with a similar name, follow their current following, and then start DMing them a conversation. And to get them into a scam, a lot of times on Instagram, they'll take them over to WhatsApp and they'll try to get their banking information or have them send information over. And this could have been prevented if the person on the other end actually did their own research to confirm this is actually Lauren Turton that they're talking to. This is actually Krego that they're talking to. This is
Right.
actually Easton that they're talking to. And you can do that by saying in the DMs, hey, Lauren, is this actually you? I'm not sure. This conversation seems a little bit weird. Can you jump on a call with me right now? Can you take a picture with your name and your date? Like, actually confirm. And this is just one area
Love
of
that.
do your own research. Do
I
your
love
own research goes into what we said earlier in regards to projects. Who are the people behind the projects? What is their history? What is their story? What can you find out about them? I know recently I had a project approach me to get involved, and they said, we're going to be doing this, this, and this. Join our Discord. And I said, well, who's actually behind the project? And I had dug into the website, I had dug into everything that they had, and no one was doxxed. And even though it's something that is interesting to me, I said, I'm going to wait a little bit longer to see, what's going on with this project. I'm going to have eyes on you all. I'm wishing you the best. And down the line, if things become a little bit more transparent and I do my own research,
Right.
I might decide to become involved.
I
And
love
then the fifth thing that I would love for people to know as they enter this space is to make sure you have boundaries with the quantity of time that you spend in the space. I know for me and so many others, when you first get involved, it can become addicting
right.
because you're learning new information, you're connecting with people in a way that you've never connected with people before. You're getting support, especially as a woman in business. I've never gotten so much support from other women in business in my entire existence. So that can become very addicting. And next thing you know, 1 hour turns into 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 12 hours go by. You haven't eaten, you haven't showered, you haven't changed your clothes, you haven't left your desk, you haven't gotten
Yeah.
fresh air. And so to make sure when you get involved in this, you set boundaries on the quantity of time so that your mental health
Yeah.
stays in check and that you can show up in the best way possible.
I love that you said that because yesterday Easton Gladney and I were talking about mental health and being super careful because I actually set times on my Google Calendar that I love 4 and 5, by the way, because those touch home because I'm a dad. So I can't just get, be like, hey guys, I'm on Twitter. I'm talking and I'm figuring out what's going on in my project. And does this make sense? My business. Sorry. I corrected myself. Uh I love those things. I want to talk just a little bit about soul career clarity, right? So you're an author, a female author, a number one bestseller. But I really want it to be the reason that more women step into this space because I want them to come back, see this podcast, whether it's a month from now, 5 months from now, a year from now, 2 years from now, and be like, wow, she's incredible. And I need to follow her more and engage with her content. Tell me a little bit about Soul Career Clarity and what it was about.
Like many people, the pandemic affected my life in a massive way. And before the pandemic, I had a coaching program called the Wealthy Wellness System, where I would help my clients create an offer based off of their areas of expertise and then scale their businesses. And when the pandemic hit, I had to shut that business down. My clients couldn't make payments. I wasn't able to pay my team members. Um, you know, it all kind of blew up in my face. And I took the first few months of the pandemic to just be and just be. And I would lay in my backyard. And remember, this was a point in time when things were really bad for a lot of people around the world. And at the time, I was living in San Diego, California. I had a really wonderful fenced in backyard. My dog, Lucky, and I, she's a 16-year-old Chihuahua Jack Russell, we would just be in the backyard. And I kept thinking to myself, what am I going to do next? How am I going to come out of this? What's my story? What's the situation? And I really analyzed that program that I had before and I stripped it down to where it could be the most basic of that original program that I created. And I decided at that time, all right, I'm ready to come back out in the world. I'm ready to help people with their businesses. And at this time, people were starting to get relief money and people were starting to come back into the world of business and maybe thinking, oh, I could have an online based business that would probably be smart for me to do since we can't be in the physical. And so, what I did is I started to create the outline of a program. And that program was called Soul Career Clarity. And instead of just launching the program, I decided as a marketing tactic to write a book based off of the program. So, Soul Career Clarity is the book that I wrote. And one of my favorite stories about Soul Career Clarity is what we said earlier about failing forward. I had written the book, I was marketing it, I was sharing with everyone the release date of this book. I was ready to rock. I was uploading the book on Amazon Kindle Direct Publishing, and about 3 days before it was due, I realized I had formatted the book completely wrong,
Hmm.
all wrong. And I was like, oh my God, I'm not going to have time to do this by the date that it's due for Kindle Direct Publishing to get out on the date. And I was mortified, full panic attack, anxiety. This is a very public situation, right? And then I realized, oh my gosh, you have to own this mistake. You have to share it with your community and you just have to come forth and tell everyone what you messed up on. And what ended up happening, Craigo, is I ended up making more book sales because of sharing that mistake that I had made.
Yeah.
People were like, Lauren, we want to support you even more now. We're here for it. Like, thank you so much for sharing the reality of it because we all go through things like this as well. And I'm sharing this because I want to bring it back to what we said earlier about failing forward and how when you show up authentically, show up as yourself. Don't worry about being this perfect person online because we're not. We're all going through so many things
Yeah.
together. And that's something that happened with Soul Career Clarity. And so the book came out. I was able to launch the program. And this program is what I became known for as a business coach. And this is what I was featured in Forbes in
Where
last
can they get the
summer.
book?
You can get it on Amazon
Hmm.
and just search my name, Lauren Turton, Soul Career Clarity. It also comes with a journal, which is an additional purchase. And the reason why I created the journal is because throughout the book, it's an easy read. I would consider it an airplane read. You could read it on a flight. I also have journal prompts in the book. And then I realized by my community telling me, Lauren, we're journaling after reading this book. I was like, oh, cool. So I created an additional journal to go with Soul Career Clarity.
How great is it that you can come back to, and I know that I do this with my content, I can come back to content that I've created or things that I've talked about, guests that I've interviewed, and I can actually come back as a viewer and take a completely different perspective on it. And I think this is also another thing. The universe will tell you if you just allow it to, if you're going in the right direction. And we talk about this. I remember when I started my podcast, and I'm curious to see this, just to see if you had the same feeling. There was this immense amount of fear, this concern of judgment, and now I sit in this seat and I get to talk to amazing people like yourself and have these great in-depth conversations, come away every time learning something. And every time that I do, that fear just dissipates. But people have to be willing to challenge that fear. So I want to finish it off on this. Over the next 365 days, what is Laura Turton looking to accomplish?
Oh, such a great question. And that question is coming at such an important day in my business's history. So, my operations manager, her name is Christina. She's an incredible person. Today is her 1 year anniversary with me. And we're celebrating that today because she started with me when I was business coaching. She journeyed with me through the pivot into the Web3 and NFT space, as well as our two other core team members, Irvin and Shane. And the four of us together have really gone through so many things over the past year or so as a business, as people, a pandemic. They're based in the Philippines, so they've gone through natural disasters. And so we're celebrating Christina's 1 year anniversary today with me and now what we've created with Freedom with NFTs. And we're really looking at what is it we're doing over the next 3 months, 6 months, 9 months, 1 year from now. And initial rollout of what we're working on right now is we're realizing in the Web3 space, what women are coming to me in regards to support for is a lot of business essentials. And yes, I do free trainings often every Wednesday at 1 p.m. in the Freedom with NFTs Discord community. I also have on the Freedom with NFTs website free trainings that people can download from when I was business coaching. But now we're taking a look at what it is that women need support with from the business point of view, but in the Web3 space. And we're going to be releasing some low ticket, $7, $27 trainings, templates, etc. So that when people come into my community, my world, and they're like, I need help with this, it's like,
Yep.
all right, we've got an entire library, free content for you, low ticket content for you, $27 ticket content for you. And the reason why we're structuring it in this way is because I remember years ago when I started my business journey, how I needed support and I needed help, but programs and coaching was very, very expensive. So
Right.
now I want to take everything that I've done, everything that I've learned, and put it into containers that are affordable for most people. So that's why we're focusing on the low ticket type of trainings and content that we will soon be releasing. And we're also doing it from the point of view of what our team members handle. So, what Christina is an expert in regards to operations management. Shane, she's an expert in repurposing content. Irvin, he's our community manager for Freedom with NFTs. So now I'm elevating my team members and they're creating trainings as well. So it's not just coming from me. And why
Right.
I'm so excited about that is because in order for a business to expand, yes, you have the visionary, the leader, you have the person who started the business, but there's also the support members. And when you can train your team members, educate them, empower them, and then they can start creating assets for the business, it's not just one person anymore.
the
And so
chemistry the chemistry and the dynamic comes together and it becomes really powerful. And your job is to, if there was an analogy of a train, you have to keep the train on the train track. So if it ever comes off, you as the leader have to be able to put that train on because you have all this talent on that train, and that's all of your team members encompassed. I think what's really cool is how many other podcasters bring other podcasters on episode. And so this is a call or the shout out to legitimate podcasts that bring great and powerful content to bring other podcasters on to talk about their experience. And so I'm super excited to follow Freedom with NFTs. And I think those are two powerful words, freedom and NFTs, and what it can bring a lot of people into the space and create opportunities, possible wealth. But also listen to those five on the podcast when people come back. You gave really great 5 great points. And I think 4 and 5 for me were the most powerful. In finishing off, I just want to throw this last one at you. Twitter or Discord or both?
Twitter. Discord is a challenge. It really is. And I think about it often because with so many new people getting into the space, we use Discord, but so many people have issues with it because it's clunky, it's not visually appealing, it can be very overwhelming. Plus, there's a lot of scams that happen. So, I'm a huge fan of Twitter. And I recently have been looking at Twitter communities and I'm debating on whether or not to try that out and get the data to see if people resonate with being in Twitter communities over Discord.
I think it's Twitter. I stay on Discord because you're getting a much younger demographic. I'm going to be 45 this summer, so I naturally gravitated towards Twitter. I never really used it, but now it's heavy on the list. An honor, Lauren, to have you on my podcast. I'm super excited to grow with your podcast, share any relevant information that you feel is important. So let's continue. And thank you so much for coming on to Craig's Crypto Corner.
Thank you so much for having me, Craigo. It's been an honor to connect with you further and to connect with your audience. And I look forward to your future, my future, our audience's future, because we live in an infinite world and it's our job to take action. And that's what we're all doing by showing up right now. You and I recording this content together, your audience, my audience, by consuming the content, we're
Yep.
doing it. We're taking action. And so it's a very exciting time in the world. And I'm an honor to be a part of it.